Well, the Prime Minister wants answers. This after authorities found an empty sloop large enough to carry up to 250 people on the shoreline of Adelaide Village early Saturday morning. No suspected migrants was in sight. According to Press Secretary Anthony Newbold, the Prime Minister was troubled that there was no sign of who came on the vessel that docked just a stone's throw away from the Royal Bahamas Defence Force's Coral Harbour base.
I also want to tell you today that the Prime Minister is very disturbed by the illegal immigrant landing on Adelaide Beach. And I know that the Minister of National Security has spoken to this, but the Prime Minister is still awaiting a complete report on what happened, because it is something that is unacceptable, and no one should believe that it should be acceptable.
Now, Mr. Newbold further stressed that the Prime Minister is holding hard and fast to his December 31st immigration deadline.
17, and I can tell you that the Prime Minister is deadly serious about his December 31st deadline for illegals to get out. He will not be deterred by anyone who would coddle those who would break the law. Being humane is fine, and the Prime Minister will always advocate for being humane, but we're a country of laws, and so you have to abide by the law.
Kirkland Neely, head of the Immigration Department's Enforcement Unit, today told our news team that nearly 60 illegal migrants had been apprehended up to news time. Meantime, National Security Minister Marvin Daines assuring that every effort's been made to ensure that the country's borders are protected.
The Bahamas, I said before, is an archipelago of over 700 islands and keys. We stretch over 100,000 square miles of sea. I can tell you from personal experience, I've had many trips when I was in the police force running operations. You can go out for hours and not see anything. For someone to think that every vessel that comes through here should be identified. I'm not saying it's impossible to be effective. You can be effective, but being effective doesn't mean that you got to get 100% of those vessels that are coming through here into our island, because it's not like these guys are waiting and saying, all right, Defense Force, we're at sea, here are our coordinates. They're finding ways to, once they get up through that Windward Passage, to ride along these chains in a very concealed fashion, whether it's coming up through the Exuma chains or whether it's coming up around the back of Andros or it's coming on the other side.
That aside, there is an ongoing effort to beef up security.
We are looking at any number of technologies, and we have any number of technologies that we're now using with the Defense Force and other agencies who are involved in protecting our borders. But even with that, to think that that's going to put a 100% blanket on our country and prevent any illegal business or activities from taking place is almost impossible. As long as there is a demand and people are in the business challenged by that. And so the point I'm making here is that we need to continue to work towards developing our intelligence capacity so that we know who these traffickers are, we know who the players are involved in these transnational activities. And one of the things that we said as a government, that we will drive our National Intelligence Agency, that we will bring legislation and our National Intelligence Agency to help us to strengthen the bonds between us and our neighbors, to ensure that together we find answers collectively to the problems we face.
In related news, the head of the Haitian Pastors Associations responding to the call for his group to turn in illegal Haitian nationals as opposed to having them break the law. Well, in an interview with our news team, Dr. Cherilise Ixante stressed that this is the attitude all Christians should adopt.
I think most of the Bahamian pastors in this island have a group of Haitians working with them. Maybe in their yard, maybe at the church, maybe at his congregation, whatever. So if there is an effort to make to find or to send the illegal back, I think everybody, Bahamian pastors, Haitian pastors, have to make the same effort.
Again, Pastor Exante's comment come on the heels of that Haitian sloop being found in Adelaide. As we've reported, no suspected migrants were spotted and the search continues.
For me, I'm not receive any new Haitian coming in my church for this occasion. I'm not said I have no Haitian illegal in my church, but about the boat to come in last week, I'm not I'm not heard anyone coming who just coming from Haiti coming in my church. Well, immigration has to do his work. It's not easy when the illegal coming in this country. They are not coming out easy. That means they stay where they are with their family.
The government has given illegals of all nationalities until the end of the year to voluntarily leave the country. Well, the Bahamas has long marketed itself as a premier destination, offering up healthy doses of sun, sand, and sea. But could it be that some tourists are flocking here for another reason? JCN's Jillian Gray has the answer in this report.
Legislation governing the local pharmaceutical market is just not as strong as it ought to be, and this in turn has created challenges, among them gray market drugs, those drugs that are just not intended for the Bahamas.
We have, unfortunately, a challenge with narcotics in this country, and I believe that the Bahamas finds itself participating in the narcotics challenge in the United States as visitors come here, not necessarily for sun, sand, and sea, but to get narcotics. That's another challenge that we're trying to shut down.
Now, this is apparently so big a problem here that while the World Health Organization allocates a certain quota of narcotics to every country, by a certain time, the Bahamas has depleted its supply. Keep in mind that more than $20 million is spent annually on medication, and that's separate and apart from the $7 million spent on the prescription drug plan.
Could that be because we are prescribing those same pain medicines intended for internal use to visitors? Now, we don't have the same level of drug enforcement agency type oversight of narcotics in the Bahamas. The same type of prescription that I write a regular request for insulin, I can write a request for morphine. And so while it is possible to track it, it doesn't have the robust safety net that it ought to have in order to protect the Bahamas.
And where does this leave the patients who really need such medication? Well, out of luck.
So what ends up happening is some people find that they got to go from pharmacy to pharmacy. They get 5 tablets here, they get 3 there, they get 2 here, because the country is out. They go to a hospital pharmacy, they say, no, these are for our inpatients.
The Pan American Organization recently completed a technical visit to the Bahamas. That visit was to specifically address closing such loopholes. For JCN News, I'm Jillian Gray.
You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.